Imagine a world where Africa keeps all its raw materials within its borders. No more shipping them off to Western countries for pennies. Instead, African nations trade with each other, fueling their own industries, creating jobs, and making their economies stronger than ever. Now picture something even bigger. No more borders between African countries. People, goods, and businesses move freely, just like they do in Europe. A trader in Kenya can easily sell products in Nigeria. A student from Mali can study in South Africa without complicated paperwork. And landlocked countries, they finally get direct access to the sea, boosting trade and cutting costs. For years, this idea felt like just a dream, something Pan-African visionaries spoke about but never saw come to life. But suddenly, Ghana's newly elected president, John Dramani Mahama, has shaken things up in a way no one saw coming. His inauguration wasn't just another political event, it was a statement. Standing alongside Burkina Faso's leader, IBRAHIM TRAORE, Mahama unveiled an ambitious plan that could reshape Africa's future. His proposal? 2 game-changing policies. Erase the colonial-era borders that divide African nations and put a stop to exporting raw materials to the West. It's a radical move. For centuries, Africa has been the world's resource hub, sending out gold, diamonds, oil, and cocoa, while receiving manufactured goods in return. This cycle has kept many nations dependent on foreign economies, but Mahama believes it's time to break free. His vision is clear. Africa must stop being a supplier of cheap resources and start becoming a powerhouse of industry. Factories should be built on African soil. Trade should happen within the continent. Wealth should stay where it belongs. But can he really pull this off? And who else might join him in this fight for Africa's economic independence? For years, African leaders have talked about unity, but in reality the continent has remained divided by invisible walls, borders drawn by outsiders over a century ago. These lines weren't made for Africa's benefit. They were designed to weaken it, splitting communities, limiting trade, and making sure African nations stayed reliant on the West. But Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama is pushing to tear down these barriers once and for all. He's not just talking about change, he's taking real action. At major events like the Africa Prosperity Dialogue and the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, Mahama made his message loud and clear. Africa needs to stop seeing itself as a collection of separate countries and start functioning as one powerful, interconnected economy. Right now, moving goods, services, and even people across African countries is complicated and full of red tape. Meanwhile, European and Asian countries trade with each other freely and grow stronger because of it. Here's the problem. Only about 21% of Africa's trade happens within the continent, while in Europe, that number is 70%, and in Asia, it's 60%. That's not a coincidence. It's the result of a system designed to keep Africa's economies weak and disconnected. But Mahama is saying enough is enough. His vision? A united Africa where businesses can expand across borders without sky-high tariffs and endless paperwork, where farmers in one country can sell directly to buyers in another without middlemen taking huge cuts, where young entrepreneurs can tap into a massive market instead of being confined to a single nation's economy. And this isn't just talk, there's real money on the line. If Africa removes these colonial-era barriers and fully embraces a single market, it could unlock a staggering $3.4 trillion in economic potential. That's more than enough to fund industries, create jobs, and make Africa a global powerhouse. If you are still watching this video, it means you love it. Why not take out a second and hit that like button? Have you done that? Let us move on. But transforming Africa into a thriving, self-sufficient powerhouse isn't just about breaking down borders, it's about building up what's inside. Roads, railways, energy grids, and internet access all need massive upgrades to make seamless trade a reality. Without these, even the best economic plans will hit roadblocks. Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama knows this. He's pushing for Africa to invest in itself, warning that without these critical improvements, the continent will remain stuck, relying on foreign aid while its wealth continues to slip away. But Mahama's vision doesn't stop there. His second, even more controversial move, shutting down the centuries-old practice of shipping Africa's raw materials straight to Western markets. For generations, Africa's gold, oil, diamonds, cocoa, and rare minerals have fueled economies around the world, while African nations have struggled with poverty, unemployment, and economic instability. It's a system designed to keep Africa as a supplier, not a competitor. Mahama says that has to end. No more shipping cocoa beans to Europe just to buy back expensive chocolate. No more sending crude oil overseas while local fuel prices remain high. No more exporting unprocessed copper, uranium, or cobalt while foreign companies rake in billions refining and selling them as finished goods. Instead, African nations must build their own industries, processing, manufacturing, and adding value to what they already have. Ghana should be producing its own chocolate brands, not just cocoa beans. Nigeria must refine its own oil, rather than selling crude and importing gasoline. Zambia should be manufacturing electronic components with its copper, not just shipping raw ore abroad. And countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, which holds a huge portion of the world's cobalt, should be leading the global battery industry, not handing over its wealth to foreign corporations. This shift isn't just about economics, it's about power. The moment Africa stops being the world's raw material supplier and starts controlling its own industries, everything changes. Mahama's vision isn't just about Ghana, it's about the entire African continent standing together, rewriting the rules, and taking back control of its economic future. He's calling on African leaders to stop playing by the West's rules and start working together to build a strong, independent economic alliance. His proposal? A powerful continent-wide rejection of foreign businesses that continue to profit from Africa's wealth without reinvesting in its people. By cutting off access to cheap resources and refusing exploitative trade agreements, African nations could finally force global powers to negotiate on equal footing, instead of dictating terms from a position of dominance. This bold stance directly challenges the long-standing economic grip of Western nations, particularly the United States. Recent geopolitical shifts like Donald Trump's decision to freeze aid to Africa have sparked a shift in mindset among African leaders. But instead of panicking, Mahama sees this as a golden opportunity. For too long, Africa has relied on foreign aid, often at the cost of its own economic independence. Mahama believes that cutting this dependency isn't a setback. It's a chance to build a self-sustaining economy driven by Africa's own resources and industries. No more waiting for handouts. No more being treated as a charity case while sitting on trillions of dollars worth of natural wealth. To put this plan into action, Mahama made a strategic visit to Burkina Faso, engaging in high-level discussions on breaking down colonial-era borders and halting raw material exports to the West. His goal? To create a united front where African nations take full control of their trade, industries, and economic future. One of the key aspects of this plan is strengthening regional trade. Historically, Ghana and Burkina Faso have relied on each other for commerce. Burkina Faso depends on Ghana as a trade gateway, and Ghana benefits from cross-border economic activity. But bureaucracy, tariffs, and poor infrastructure have made this relationship inefficient. Mahama's solution is clear. Invest in better roads, modernize railways, and establish direct flights between Accra and Ouagadougou. By making it easier for goods and people to move freely, both countries, and eventually the entire continent, can shift from being resource suppliers to thriving industrial economies. Mahama also emphasized the need for stronger agricultural partnerships, ensuring that African nations can feed themselves without relying on food imports. He believes that a thriving agricultural sector is key to economic independence, creating jobs and securing Africa's future. But what really grabbed attention was his visit to Burkina Faso, right after IBRAHIM Traore's trip to Ghana. Traore, a leader known for making bold moves, has already taken steps toward deeper African unity by forming a confederation with Mali and Niger. Now, Mahama's presence suggests that this alliance could be expanding. His timing couldn't be more symbolic. Traore arrived in Ghana with a firearm strapped to his belt, a clear message that Africa's new generation of leaders isn't here to play by the old rules. With Mahama now stepping into the conversation, it's clear that these discussions are no longer just ideas. The blueprint for a stronger, borderless Africa is taking shape. Though the full details of their plans remain under wraps, one thing is obvious. Africa is moving toward a future where it controls its own resources and dictates its own terms. The talk of removing borders and keeping raw materials within the continent is no longer just wishful thinking. It's becoming a real strategy that more countries are starting to consider. So, what do you think? Could leaders like Mahama, TRAORE, and the military governments of Mali and Niger be laying the groundwork for a united Africa? One that finally breaks free from foreign control? Are we witnessing a level of African solidarity that has never been seen before? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. How can African nations work together to keep their wealth, add value to their resources, and set their own prices, instead of letting Europe and the West call the shots? If you found this discussion interesting, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on more updates about Africa's changing future.